everybody, welcome to Coding Jitsu channel. Today's video, we are diving into a code refactor for an email collection widget that I built in my previous tutorial. In that video, we built a full stack blog app using Next.js, MDX file support, and a PostgreSQL database to track view counts. If you haven't seen it yet, you can find the link in the description below or click on the card right up here somewhere on the top right corner. Here is the video. You can see building Next.js full stack blog with TypeScript, ShadCNUI, MDX, and Prisma. All right, so here is the blog, and at the right here on the bottom right corner, you see there's a newsletter. This is the widget that we'll be working on today. So this email collection widget I added to the footer. It's functional but pretty basic. It uses the browser default validation. I also added a simple Zod validation to display error or success message. Let me show you what I mean by this. So if I just put here like so, and this version of my blogging platform is deployed right now. So you can see here in the next blog CJ at Versal, right? So if I try to subscribe right here, the default browser validation kicks in and it tells you that, hey, you need an ad, right? And if I put an ad here, you now have to put something pass at. So let's go ahead and do like an email. And if I just do this, if I subscribe here, you see that it is actually going to work. So I have this thank you for subscribing. So message and everything is working, but this email obviously is a bogus email that I will be talking about. I will try to fix, right? If I click on subscribe like here, you're also going to get email is required. So this validation is also coming from Zod. So I'll be working to fix those things. Now, there is another issue with this particular email widget is that there is absolutely no loading state. So let me show you here. If I inspect and if I go to network, you can see here I can just click as fast as I can. There is no loading state. It is just going to make a post request to our database, which is not really good. So I'll be fixing that as well. So here, you can see that I have a source directory. Inside source directory, I have my app, I have my component, my DB, and lib. Again, if you want to see how it all works, I created this from scratch in that tutorial video. Go check that out first. So in the component, I have this component called footer, okay? And this footer is just a basic JSX file. In my case, it's TSX. Here, what I'm doing is I am rendering a form element with action dispatch, which is actually using server actions in Next.js. And here I am doing an input. So this is the input, this input right here. And here you can see here type email. Just by putting type email, you are going to get this basic email validation from your browser. So this is what's going on. And then I have, this is after refactor. I can show you before the refactor. So this is the before refactor here. It was just simply a button with subscribe on it. This button is coming from ShadCNUI. Okay, then I change it to a component and I'm going to show you why I changed this. So let me go back to the footer.tsx and let me show you the dispatch. This is how the server action works in Next.js. State and dispatch is coming from useFormStatus hook. And because we're using a hook, this component also needs to be a useClient component. And here is the create subscriber function, which we are defining here in our actions.ts file. So here you can see export async function create subscriber. It takes a previous state, form data, and then we are validating this field with our Zod schema right here. And then we are putting this into our database. Okay, this is how our blog, our email widget is currently working. So let me show you the refactor here. So I'm going to actually close all my tabs here and just going to go to my footer.tsx. And here, the first thing I want to show you is that loading state, the first problem, right? I want to show some type of loading state while it's actually processing. So in order to do this, what I end up doing is that instead of that button, I actually created a new component called submit button. And this component is going to be here. So this is a component, is also needs to be a use client. Here we are bringing in useFormStatus. This is the useFormStatus available on React. You can learn more by going to this documentation from your React. It actually gave you a pending status. It actually looks into if there's any form submission happened, it's going to look for that pending status there. So it kind of tripped me out a little bit because this component has to be a separate, like a child component that you will have to render inside a form element. So that's why I had to create a specific submit button. It bring in use form status and the button, chat.cn UI button. And here you can see that we are destructuring pending. We are rendering the button with aria disabled, pending, and disabled pending. So if pending is true, it's going to be disabled. And then based on that pending status, we are going to show loading if it's true, false if it's subscribe. And then we are going to simply bring this submit button here, import this, and render this here instead of our button inside our form element. That is going to take care of our loading state. Let me show you. So this is all of my refactor is not pushed to GitHub. So my deployed version still has the previous version, but this is my newer version, which is localhost 3000. I want to show you something here. So if I inspect and let's go to network, because it's really fast, right? So if I do, let's say, test at test.com, something like this. If I click on here, you see that loading state is very quick. Throttle the speed. Let me go to 3G so you can see it better. Now here, I'm going to try this one again. You see that now you can see the loading state. So, and the button goes in disable state. So let's take a look at extra validation that we wanted to do inside our utils.ts file. And you have to make sure that this utils.ts file is in the app directory, because we will be utilizing this DNS package, which is a node specific package, a node standard package that's coming from DNS. And the way we're going to validate our email address that's coming into, we are going to validate with their MX records. If there is an MX records available, then we can say that, okay, this is a valid email address. So I'm going to import this promises as DNS from DNS. And then here, I'll go ahead and create this function right here. Let me show you this function right here. So this is going to be an async function called validate email address. It's going to take an email address as a string type. Here I'm creating an array, which is invalid domains. This is from my experience. You can add multiple emails that you think are just going to be fake. So here I have the temp mail.com, example.com, email.com, and this is like a typo. I can also add another one. It's called test.com. Save this. And this is going to be invalid domains. Okay. And then I'm destructuring user and domain from email addresses I'm getting from the parameter here and splitting on the @ I'm simply just looking into if that domain includes any of this invalid domains. If that's the case, then I'm just going to return false. If it's a valid domain, then I'm going to try here. I'm going to say const mx records. If there isn't any records, I'm going to utilize that package DNS. So await dns.resolve mx with that particular domain. This needs to be awaited because that's why this function needs to be async. Now from here, if there is no mx records or mx records.length is 0, then again, we are going to return false. Otherwise, we're going to return true. That means there is MX records for that particular domain. And then catch, if there's any error, we're just going to console error. And here in our action.ts, I want to look at, because this is the validate email our custom function, I want to now use it with my Zod schema. So here you can see our form schema. This is the previous version on your left-hand side. The new version is going to be our right-hand side. Form schema z.object is going to have an ID and it's going to have an email. So the first, we are basically checking z.string. It has to be a string. On string, it has to have a minimum of 1 character. And then it's just going to give you a message, email is required, just error message. You don't have to put this. There is a default message, but if you want to customize your message, then you can put it in an object, right? So here, the new word refactor is Zod actually has an email validator. So I can actually call on string.email And here again, I'm just putting a customized message. So string, I'm calling on email. That's going to look for email validation. A valid email is required. And then I'm also chaining up another method called refine in Zod schema. And here you can create your own function. I pass in my custom function, which is the validate email address that we just created. And here I'm also passing a message. This is going to be the error message. Email does not meet custom validation rules. The next change we are going to make is going to be inside the create subscriber function. You see that this is now an async function. So that's why I need to await this create subscriber. And another change I need to make here is that previously we were using safe parse. Because it's an async, we now have an option to provide safe parse async. That's what we need to add. And everything is pretty much going to be the same. We are going to get the email once it's validated, and then we are going to then push into our DB. So the main thing is that we created a specific validate email function, and then we put it into our Zod schema to utilize with our Zod error messages. Now let's take a look what is the newer version looks like. You can see here that first thing is without any email. If I try to subscribe, it's going to give you this message, a valid email is required. If I do put in some bogus email, let's do that, subscribe, it is still going to give me that error, a valid email is required. I can literally go ahead and copy this into my deployed version. And then if I subscribe here, you see that it's actually going to go to my DB and try to put this inside there. So if I do just email, let's subscribe again, you see that it is actually going to subscribing. This bogus email is actually going to my DB. Now with my new refactor, same email, it's not even passing my validation, right? So if I do put this type of information right here, like bogus, like if I subscribe, email does not meet custom validation rules. So you see our custom email collection widget is now much more robust. So we can actually do, like, let's say test hotmail.com. This should work. Subscribe. You see, thank you for subscribing. So there you go. It's a very simple refactor. We added a loading state and improved email validation, making our email collection widget more robust and production ready. If you found this helpful, give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more coding tutorials like this. Let me know in the comments if there's a feature or project you would like me to cover next. Thanks for watching Coding Jitsu, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy coding.